quilty friends. Been a little bit, but I'm back now. And we are right in the middle of the fall season. Thanksgiving is coming up, and I want to make a table runner. And I've got this great fabric that I got last year, and I can't wait to use it. And it is so adorable. I mean, look at that. All of the puppies and the leaves and the colors. And this really means a lot to me right now because, well, we lost our two fur babies in the last couple of months. And they were almost 14. Well, one was 14 and the other one was almost 15. And it's been a transition, to say the least. So I want to do this kind of in remembrance of them and how much they mean to me. And they both were born in the fall. They both loved pumpkin. They loved the cooler weather. So it's just appropriate that I do this in honor of them. And I went and I looked through some of my fabrics to see, what I had on hand. I didn't want to go out and buy anything. So I had this beautiful orange left over from a project that I'm making for a friend of mine. And I also had this beautiful rusty brown as well. So I think that these two are going to be perfect to make a table runner. So I need to figure out what size table runner I want to have, and I'll talk to you about some of the different sizes and purposes of table runners. And then we're going to have to get doing some measuring, and I'll need my little sketchbook. So let's get started on that, and I will be back in a minute ready to go. Let's get this started. Okay, I think I'm ready to go. I was gifted this bullet journaling book. I don't know if it's actually a bullet journal, but it's got all the little dots, the little dotted journals. Anywho, I was gifted this from a very sweet and talented friend of mine who passed this summer. It's been a tough time. There have been a lot of passings and that sort of thing. So I've definitely had to take some time for some healing, and it hasn't been easy, but we are persevering. Okay, so this is going to be a very simple table runner, something that anybody can do. Now, let's talk about the style. It's going to be basic. I just want this main fabric right in the middle, nothing fancy. And then I'm going to have these other two fabrics. Let's see, where did it go? These other two fabrics for borders. Oh, and if I can find this book, I will send a link to it so that you guys can get one too, because I have found it to be immensely helpful in writing my patterns and keeping things straight. Okay, so then I think I just want to have just your basic orange border, and then another one that's going to be brown. I think that's what I want to do. Okay. So for the whole thing, the size, table runners come in a ton of different sizes, and everybody's tables are different sizes, and the shape of the tables are different, from round to square to rectangular. It all varies. So what I would suggest, if you're going to make it for a friend, ask them not only what their table size is, which I know it kind of, if it's like a gift, it can kind of give it away. But otherwise, just try to think about it. But the table runners, they can either go off of two different sides, or they can be just along the middle, or almost like part of a centerpiece. So it can vary quite a bit. Now, if I'm actually at an eating table, I prefer to not have the sides go off the edges, because whoever's sitting at that edge is going to have to be like hitting it with their legs in their lap, and I just find that to be a little awkward, and you kind of, you know, you worry about moving stuff, knocking things down. It's just my preference. Everybody has their own preferences, and I'm sure that you do as well. So don't worry about it. Just keep it in mind when you're trying to decide what size you want to make. However, if I'm doing it for an end table, I actually kind of like the look of it coming off the sides sometimes. So it really depends on the application of it. I don't want to make this one too big because I don't have a specific place in mind for it. And if the table is round, it can be a little awkward on the edges. So I'm just going to keep this relatively small. I think I want it to be about 30 inches long. So that's what we're going to put it at. And I don't want a lot of these two fabrics. I think that I want these to be maybe, let's see, let's look at the ruler. See what looks appealing to us. Maybe 2 inches big, perhaps. Okay. So that means there will be 2 inches of both fabrics on all sides. And as far as the width goes, it doesn't need to be that fat. So maybe 12 at the most. So we'll make it 12 by 30. Now, again, you can make it as big as you want, as little as you want. You can even make a placemat. It is really up to whatever application you want to have it in, and you don't need to listen to anybody's rules about how this is going to go. You need to do what you want to do. Okay, so if I have it 12 inches from here to there, and each of these is going to finish at 2 inches on either side, that's going to be 12 minus 2 minus 2, and that is going to equal 8 inches. Okay, guys, I'm going to save you a little bit of time right now because I am just rambling off numbers and ideas and measurements, and it would be painful for you to have to experience it for the length that I go on. So I'm speeding it up a little bit, saving some time, and I'll show you the measurements later on, the final ones, that is. Everything's nice and tidy, so we should probably get started on the first border. Now, before I get piecing, I've got my stack of leaders and enders. Now, if you're new to my channel, I like to use the stack of leaders and enders for a postage stamp quilt that I'm making for my hubby. It's been a while since I've shown an update to that quilt, so I might need to do that soon. But that's what I'm using for my leaders and enders. And if you're not sure what a leader and ender is, look up Bonnie Hunter. She knows. She coined the phrase. I mean, I think some of us have used the technique for a while, but she's got great insight, great instructions, and a lot of inspiration in that arena. So I've got my leaders and enders ready. Got my first two pieces here, and I do think that we're going to listen to some music, but before we listen to some music, I thought I would, Thanksgiving's coming up, so I thought that we could discuss some of our Thanksgiving food traditions. Now, one of mine is to have a Thanksgiving Day breakfast, and it is big and it is hearty, but it's simple. It's actually quite easy, and most of it's done the day before. But the great thing about it is that you get up and you eat this wonderful breakfast, and then after that you are set to wait it out through all the rest of that time so that you can actually not suffer and not be so impatient waiting for your Thanksgiving meal to be totally prepared. So anyway, it just makes it nice. It takes a lot of the pressure off of trying to get everything done before we all get super grumpy and gnaw our own arms off or each other's, that kind of thing. And we tend to enjoy our Thanksgiving dinner closer to our evening meal, which some people call supper, some people call dinner. It's all the same thing. So what we like to do for breakfast, it's a tradition. Hold on, let me show you how I pin these. And I'm big on pinning, guys. I always pin on one corner, then the other corner, and then I flatten it out nice and neat. I find the center, and then I pin that. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Okay. Then make this nice and neat. Find the center, pin that, and I usually kind of just get back to the left side until it's about maybe a hand width apart, maybe a little smaller depending, but usually about like that. So yeah, nearly about a hand. Okay, and then I come back and I fill in those spots, and then I'll do the same with the other side. Okay, so the menu that we usually do for Thanksgiving breakfast is, my son loves to make the Libby's pumpkin bread. It comes in a little kit with some canned pumpkin and some icing, and it makes 2 loaves. That is his favorite, and well, it's all, we all love it, but he enjoys making that himself, which anything that somebody in your family enjoys making, then by all means let them make it. The other thing is that we tend to have a frittata, and that's something that I usually make with eggs obviously, potatoes, cheese, salt, pepper, a little bit of onion flakes, and ham. And finally, we make a fruit salad with strawberries, apples, grapes, and pineapple. And we usually just kind of let that meld overnight. And then we take that wonderful fruit salad and we put it inside waffle cones. It's kind of like a little nod to a cornucopia. And if I have a picture of one of our breakfasts, I'll put it on right about now just so that you can see. But it is so tasty and it is so filling, and it just makes the day start off so much better. So if you guys do any particular Thanksgiving breakfasts, let me know. And I think we're going to go ahead and go to the music while I sew this, because let's face it, I don't talk and sew very well. It slows me down. So I'll get busy now. Okay, first two sides are done. I am really liking how the orange looks with this. It makes me feel very happy. And I have a friend who loves the color orange. Probably makes her happy to look at it. And she likes dogs too. So I think she would definitely appreciate this. Now, another little pinning tip. We're going to put that right there. So I've already explained how I like to go from side to side first. Or corner to corner, rather. But because there are seams here, when I get to that point, I'm going to pin where these seams are, because I'm sure that some of you have had the issue where you go to sew it and it turns up like that. We don't want that. So I always try to pin them down. This side wouldn't matter too much because it's going to go that way. But even still, I just find if I'm in the habit of pinning where there is a seam, I don't have to pay attention to which way it's going. Now, we've talked about Thanksgiving breakfast. But we didn't talk about what we like to drink with Thanksgiving breakfast. Now, we usually have two things that we stick with. Number one is coffee. I'm a big coffee drinker. I have to get my day started. My husband calls it the go-go juice, all the things. So I have to have my coffee. Sometimes we will have like a special flavored coffee, like a pumpkin coffee or that sort of thing. Not always, but sometimes. And his favorite thing to drink is, and don't get me wrong, I love it too, it doesn't love me, is orange juice. And his favorite is simply orange. Now, I always like the kind with the pulp. That's my favorite. I know there are some people out there who are just so not okay with drinking the pulpy stuff. But he usually gets the extra pulp for me, which is so unbelievably sweet. However, since I turned, I don't know, 45 or definitely 50, I get the worst heartburn when I drink orange juice, so I don't drink it anymore. But it does go very well with that particular breakfast. So, if you choose to take a page out of my book and create that same menu, orange juice is definitely a good way to go. I'm going to go ahead and turn the music back on, finish sewing these 2 short sides, and then when we come back for the next border, I want to talk about our actual Thanksgiving meal. See what you guys have in mind about that. Okay. Okay, that came together pretty quickly. Now I need to add the next border. Same exact process as we did before, it's just going to be a tad bit bigger. So, our Thanksgiving dinner. We are creatures of habit, and we tend not to like change. And by we, I mean my family and I, not the collective we. So we like turkey, and my husband tends to cook the turkey, and we have found a recipe that he really likes, and usually it comes out with great results. There was one place that we lived, and every year the turkey was a disaster, and he was doing exactly the same thing. So we can only assume that it had to do with the oven that we had at that time. Who knows? And it's really tasty, and it's really simple. It's oil, olive oil, and butter, and lemon, and your basic Scarborough fare kind of herbs, Pretty simple. Now, for the sides. We like stuffing, and don't hate us, but of all of the different stuffing or dressing that we have ever tried, stovetop stuffing is our absolute favorite. It just is. And we don't like the turkey kind. We like the chicken kind. So it is what it is, and it makes us happy, and so that's what we stick with. Which I'm not angry about that, because it is super simple. It's one of the last things I cook on Thanksgiving Day, and I usually have to cook a couple of boxes at least, because we've got some big eaters in my family. Mashed potatoes and gravy. So for the mashed potatoes, I have a very specific way that I cook them, and a very specific way that my family likes them to be cooked. And oddly enough, my family prefers lumps in their potatoes. I don't know if you ever watched that Friends episode where each person is asking Monica to do a different type of potato, and one of them wanted lumps, and she's like, there aren't supposed to be lumps. Well, some of us prefer lumps, And I use chicken broth instead of water when I boil them. And I boil them to the point to where they're not just tender, they are nearly falling apart. And when you do that, and then you drain the potatoes, so much of that chicken broth is stuck inside the actual potato, which makes it so flavorful. Then I put the potatoes back in the pan for a reason. I don't stick them in a bowl to mash them. I put them back in the pan. And the reason I do that is because I want that heat. So then I start by adding butter. I'm not going to tell you how much butter I add. It might be considered a crime. I will just say it's a very good amount of butter. So I add a lot of butter, and then I start mashing it. Oh, and of course I add salt and pepper, because you've got to have salt and pepper. And I put a decent amount of each one. I don't do the garlic potatoes. I don't do the cheddar. I don't do the sour cream. Salt, pepper, butter. And then after I've used that excessive amount of butter, that is when I add just a little bit of milk, because it doesn't take that much. I mean, when you've got all of that extra chicken broth in those potatoes and then that obscene amount of butter, you just don't need that much milk. And that is exactly how my family loves it. When it comes to gravy, and this is probably going to make some of you, just cringe, we do not make gravy from our turkey. As a matter of fact, we don't even use turkey gravy. We don't even like turkey gravy out of the jar. We use the powdered brown gravy. I know. So much for going back to the basics and making things, from scratch. We like what we like. And if it just happens to be, nice and easy to boot, I'm good with that. And so that's, those are our top 3 staples. But we still have other things that we have to have. For example, green bean casserole. It's a given. And do I make it exactly the way that it suggests? Almost. But you know how it says to, and I don't remember the amount, so just bear with me. Do you know how it says to put X amount, or measure out X amount of the French fried onions? And then you put a certain portion of those in the casserole, and then you save a bit of that portion to put on top for later. Well, I put the whole thing inside the casserole, and then I just add more on top later. I like to use extra of those little crispy onions. Oh my goodness, they are so yummy. I recently saw where somebody was trying to save some extra money for Thanksgiving, as I am sure that we are all trying to do this time around. And instead of using the French fried onions, she used breadcrumbs. I thought my poor son was going to lose his mind. He's like, no! And he's right. I didn't say it, but I was right there with him. You gotta have the French fried onions. It's a must. And while I tend to use a lot of store brand foods, what we used to call generic. Do you remember how we used to call that generic? Anyway, I tend to use a lot of store brand foods because I don't like paying extra for exactly the same thing. When it comes to our cream of mushroom soup, or our cream of chicken soup, or our tomato soup, we always go with Campbell's. We've tried the other stuff, and we didn't like it. We've tried several brands of the other stuff, and we didn't like it. It's Campbell's for the win for that. Absolutely. The rest of the stuff, the green beans, doesn't matter. Even the French fried onions, while I prefer French's, I'm good with other brands too. It's not as important, but not for the soup. The other thing that we always have to have is praline yams. Now, I originally got the recipe off of a can of yams, but I have since altered it to make my family happy. Because they liked it before, but then they wanted it more decadent. So I take the yams, and we're also picky about what brand of yams we use too. It's either Princella, or I think that's how it's pronounced, or Bruce's. Those are our two go-tos. And we tend to add, we don't do the casserole, even though it's got a lot of the same ingredients. We do a mixture of butter and pecans and coconut and brown sugar. And we just kind of make, it's almost like a crumble. And the original recipe had flour in it, but we don't do that. We just keep it to those ingredients. And we have probably, I don't know, maybe doubled or tripled the amount at this point. Who knows? It's excessive. But, I mean, you know, it's a holiday situation. It's not something that we do any other time of the year other than holidays. And we have been known to do it for 3 different holidays. Even still, we put that in there on top of the yams, get it all sprinkled and spread out as best we can, bake it in the oven until it starts to, you know, get all kind of bubbly and melty and stuff. And then we top it with those marshmallows. As if all of that other stuff was not decadent enough, we have to top it with those marshmallows and get them all nice and toasty brown. Yeah. It's so good. It is just so good. And we've gone other places and had other stuff, but so far, this is what my family wants. Out of all the other options that they've tried, this is the one that they want to stick with, which that's fine. I'm going to iron this, and I will be back, and then we will talk about 2 other things that we always have for our Thanksgiving meal. And another one's one that I just made up. Not that it's that impressive, but a couple of the family members really, really love it, so we keep doing it. I'll be back in a second. And I'm back. Look at how that's coming together. I'm really loving that combination. Okay. So the final 2 dishes that we always have for Thanksgiving dinner. One is a corn dish that I don't even know why I made it up. I don't know what possessed me to think of it, but I did. Anyhow, I take 2 cans of yellow corn and 2 cans of white corn. And I don't know why I chose to do that. Like I said, I don't remember. I made this recipe up about, I don't know, 15 to 20 years ago. So it's been a little while since I remember exactly what inspired it. But first, before I deal with the corn, I take a full pound of bacon, which I gotta say, the cost of bacon right now, it is like up to like $8 and $9 a pound. That's excessive. So I don't know that we're going to be using that this year. I don't know. Maybe I'll just get a small bag of bacon bits or something. Anyhow, but I cook up all of that bacon. And I cut it up prior to cooking it so that it's automatically crumbled. I don't have to, you know, crumble it later on. And after that, I leave a little bit of that bacon grease in the skillet. And I put in my 2 cans of corn. And probably about a tablespoon of onion flakes, a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, and I just let all of that meld together. Now, I still have the bacon crumbles off to the side because they don't need to continue to cook right at this second. Then, I take about a handful of finely shredded cheddar and I pop that in there with that corn. And I get that all nice and melty. Then I add the bacon back, take it out, put it into a casserole dish, add more cheese on top, mostly as a garnish, but I mean, you can go hog wild if you want. And then I will either stick it in the oven to melt that top layer of cheese, or a couple times I've even used the microwave and that did just fine too. And so that's my corn dish. Super simple, and yet it's very well received. Do we do the cranberry thing? No, we don't. I did make cranberries once from scratch, and I had looked at, I don't know, probably a dozen different recipes because my son wanted to try it, and I thought, well, I know he's not going to like the stuff out of the can, so I'm going to do it from scratch. And whatever it was that I did, he loved it. And I made the mistake of not writing any of it down, and I have no idea what it was. None. I don't remember anything. It may have had orange juice in it, may have had grape juice in it. I have no idea. I don't know what I did. I did try to figure it out one other time, and it was not good. So whatever I did, it's never going to happen again. But that's okay, because clearly we've got plenty of food as it is. And the absolute final thing that we have to have, and this was something that my kids insisted on when they were young. Do they want cornbread? Nope. Do they want sweet potato biscuits? No. They want crescent rolls. The kind that come right out of the can. That's what they want. Who am I to argue with something that's nice and yummy? I mean, is it exactly like a nice, beautifully buttery croissant? No, but it's still good. It's easy. They like it. So that's what we stick with. And finally, the drink. For years, it was Martinelli's sparkling apple juice. And then we added on to that with some sparkling grape juice, both red and white. So we would all just kind of go from one bottle to the other. And over the years, I still enjoy it, and I think it looks really pretty on the table, but it doesn't feel like it's a requirement. I am perfectly content with my Diet Cola, so that's all fine and dandy for me. And that leads us to dessert. Dessert. As if we haven't eaten enough yummy, scrumptious, decadent things already. Now we've got dessert. And when my husband and I got together, I asked him, and we were actually at a supper with people from church, and one of the new pastors was sitting with us, and so she was overhearing the discussion. And I said, so do you prefer pumpkin or pecan pie for Thanksgiving. And he said, I'm a traditionalist. I like pumpkin. I said, okay, great. We can have pumpkin for Thanksgiving and pecan for Christmas. And he said, that sounds perfect. I said, great. And that was it. And she just shook her head and she was in awe. And she said, there have been huge marriage disagreements and such over which pie you should have for which holiday. But I love both of those pies. Those are my two favorite pies. There have been occasions that I have made an apple pie as well for Thanksgiving, but for the most part, pumpkin is always the go-to. Absolutely. I would love to hear what your favorite side dishes are, what your favorite desserts are, if you're making any different plans this year because things have gotten a little crazy with the price of groceries right now. So please tell me in the comments what you're going to be up to this Thanksgiving. And if you're going to travel, because I know that flying has been a situation. So let me know what's going on with you. I'd love to hear it. And now we're going to go back to some music, and I'm going to finish sewing on the two short sides. I have it temporarily basted. And what I did, because I'm going to be birthing this quilt, so it's a little bit different than doing a regular basting, where later you're going to do a binding. So I'll tell you what I did. The first thing I do is I put a piece of batting down, and the great thing about scrap batting is that it is perfect for table runners and other small projects. And so this was a scrap of mine. So I lay down my scrap batting, and then I lay the backing down face up, and then I lay the top face down. And when I do it, I iron everything flat and together so that it kind of adheres a little bit to each other. And then I very carefully go around and I pin all of the edges to make it nice and smooth and flat and that sort of thing. And where I need to leave an opening, because to be honest, I used to forget to leave the opening. I would just be so into what I was doing and just going around in a circle, rectangle, square, whatever. And I would forget to leave the opening. So what I do now is I put pins going in the other direction so that obviously I can't sew over those. And when I take these out, it's I know what I'm doing, believe it or not. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to sew around this. then I'm going to trim right at this line of the actual top. Right here is where I'm going to trim. And I will be sewing a 1/4 inch inside of the top. So I'll be sewing right here. Well, let me see if I can get it a little bit closer to you so you can see. I'm going to sew right about here, and then I'm going to trim right here on the edge. And then we'll birth it together. Let's get started. It's all nice and trimmed. I have trimmed off the corners like that. Gonna move my machine out of the way just a tad. And then we're gonna find that hole. And guys, I've got my purple thing. It's a must for me. So I'm gonna go in between, just in case you've never birthed a quilt before. Go in between the backing and the front. And I like to just go to one of the angles and kind of stick my finger right in that little bit right there. And then sort of pull that through. I find that helps quite a bit to get it started. Now I have seen some with like really, really big quilts where they do a process where they kind of roll it all up and birth it. It's actually pretty satisfying to watch. I don't recall if I've ever tried it because I usually don't birth large quilts. I'm too nervous that when it comes time to quilt them, I'll get puckers and stuff like that. So I really only do this for small things. And sometimes even the small ones I like to do a binding on. It really just kind of depends on the mood that I'm in. But I'm wanting this to be a pretty quick project. So we're gonna just birth it today. All right. You see that corner? Use my finger first as much as I can. Which that's actually pretty good. Then I'll stick my purple thing in there. And even with the purple thing, any tool actually, you got to be careful because you don't want to bust through that corner. So sometimes I will actually work on a corner, then move on to the next corner, move on to the next one, and then just kind of keep going around until they're all exactly the way that I want. And you know, I see a lot of people who are not even remotely precise with their corners, and nobody seems to mind. So, you know, you do it until you're happy with it. I like to get them pretty sharp, but I'm definitely not perfect with it. Now see, this one I'm pretty content with. I don't know how well you can see. I'm pretty content with that. I may try to adjust it just a smidge, but we'll see how it goes. But I always start with the corners, and then I work on trying to flatten this out. Now when I get it to where I want it, I'm going to go over and I'm going to press it all down. Make all of those sides and the corners nice and flat, get them really set in preparation for the quilting. And I'm not going to do anything really extravagant with the quilting today either. Like I said, I wanted this to be a pretty quick project. We're going to see how it goes. And I'll also show you how I go about dealing with the open edge. You know, I've got my finger way up, my hand way up here, all the way up to my elbow. And it's probably totally inappropriate, but I'm reminded of when I see people and they're trying to help birth cows. I mean, they're all the way up to their shoulder. It's terrible. And I love cows, but that is not a job I would want to have. Okay. The corners aren't too bad at the moment. Let's see if we can kind of get this settled. Now, when I go to press it, I really finagle it to make sure it's flat, and I make sure that this is not a situation right here. We don't want that. I make sure that's tucked under and that this is nice and flat on top, and then I press it. It's not difficult. It takes just a little bit of time, and I think it makes a world of difference. And right now I'm just going to kind of give it a little bit of a hand press just to see how it's looking. Okay. We okay with those corners? I think so. Now, this one, the opening. What I like to do, and sometimes I will actually use a little bit of just your basic school glue stick to help. But I've also been known to use pins, and if it's a really small opening, I don't tend to use anything at all. So I tuck it in just as though the seam is right there. And every once in a while, I will just take, and I'll show you how I do it. I don't know that it's necessary for this one, but why not? We'll go ahead and, so I kind of fold that under, make sure it's lined up with the actual seams. And then I just put a little pin right there. And then when I get to the iron, I'll just kind of press on either side of the pins to put it down all the way. And that seems to help. And I used to actually hand sew these openings closed. And I don't do that anymore. I just make sure that I do a seam all around it that is close enough to the edge that it's going to catch everything in it. And that seems to work just fine. Now sometimes if you're not careful, you'll end up with where it kind of like sticks out a little bit. You've got that seam right there, and it kind of like tends to curve. Just check it out before you sew anything. And you can always tuck stuff in just a little bit more to get that side straight. And I think that's pretty good. I'll double check it after I press it just to see if I like it. Okay. I think I'm good. Oh, I'm not actually too pleased with this corner. So let me show you what another option is, to gently take a pin and kind of pull it forward, just like that. I don't usually do it, but I don't necessarily want to unpin this right now. Okay, much better. I will be back in a second after this is all pressed. We are all pressed. Now, for this particular quilt, I've decided I want to use a variety of threads. I've been working with the orange, and that'll be great for the orange part. And I've got this beautiful color right here for the middle, and this brown here. Now, it looks a lot darker, and I want you guys to know how to do this just in case you have thread and you're not sure whether or not you can use it. When I spread it out right here, it's not that dark. I mean, it is darker, but it looks fine. It looks great. So just keep that in mind. Obviously that, a lot darker, but you're only going to have just the one little line, or lines rather. Now I've been using the orange, and I need to go around the edge, so I need to change it to the brown. And then I'm just going to sew about 1/8 of an inch. There's a little area on my sewing foot that I use as a guide. I haven't bothered to measure it to see exactly what it is, but I'd say it's close to 1/8 of an inch. Maybe if I remember, I'll measure it today once it's sewn on. We'll see. I've got a lot going on, guys. So coming up, I don't know if any of you have seen my not so quilty videos where I've been doing some crafty stuff, because quilting is not my only love. I also like to do a variety of crafts, and having my little not so quilty area gives me an opportunity to share some of those things with you guys, because I haven't really been able to, or I haven't made it a priority to share them with you. But coming up soon, which is rather exciting, a friend of mine, Pam from Be Creative Crafts, is holding a Christmas challenge collaboration. And I'm not going to go into the details yet, but I will say I am definitely challenging myself. I'm a little nervous about how it's all going to come out, but I'm also really excited. I'm excited to see if my crazy brain has come up with things that are going to be fun and interesting. And I'm also excited to see what everybody else comes up with. So you guys are going to have to stay tuned, because I think it's going to be really fun. Okay, I'm going to sew this, and then we will be back to discuss the quilting. That's all done. And I did measure, and it is 1/8 of an inch. So that works out beautifully. Now, for the quilting, I've kind of pressed it again just to kind of get everything to adhere to itself, because I don't want any, puckers and lumps and whatnot. Now, my favorite marking tools, Crayola washable markers. I find that they always come out, so I like them. And I've got a variety of colors here, because the only part that I'm actually going to be marking is the center right here. I don't need to mark this or this, because I know exactly what I'm going to do. Just your basic 1/4 inch on either side kind of thing. But in here, I'm going to do, it's kind of a crosshatch, but the shapes are going to be more of a diamond than a square on point. So for example, on this side, I'm going to mark every 3¼ inches, and on this side, every 4 inches. So that's what we're going to do. And just depending on where it's going to land will depend on what marker I use, because even though it always comes out, I still would like to use something as minimal as possible. And I'm only going to be making dots because I can definitely sew on my own from dot to dot to dot without really worrying about it being too wonky or that sort of thing. So that's what I'm going to do. I need to start making the dots first, though. And I'm just going to sit here and do this, and it's going to get kind of boring. You can watch or you can fast forward, whatever you want to do. But I'll have some music playing for you. Okay, it's all marked. I'm going to change my thread. I'm going to quilt the whole thing, and then we'll see the final reveal when it's done. Okay, the quilting is done. I'm going to clip a couple of threads and then we'll see the final results. Be back in a second. And that is all that I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving surrounded by those that you truly love and adore. And until next time, I hope you're cozy in your jammies.